Welcome to the program. I'm Okbayemi Owosheni. We begin with business news. The World Bank has imposed a 30-month debarment on two Nigerian companies, Viva Atlantic Limited and Technology House Limited, alongside their managing director and chief executive officer, Norman Diadem, over alleged corrupt practices. The 30-month debarment bars Viva Atlantic Limited, Technology House Limited and Diadem from participating in World Bank Group finance projects and operations. A statement by the Washington-based bank said the sanction follows findings on fraudulent, collusive and corrupt practices connected to the National Social Safety Net project in Nigeria. We'll take a break now and be back with company news. Welcome back. The African Development Bank Group and Prosper Africa, a United States presidential initiative, have partnered by signing a $700,000 donor contribution agreement to strengthen data accountability in African market. This was revealed in a statement by Beth Dunford, AFDP Vice President for Agriculture, Human and Social Development, revealing that the United States Treasury Department was also part of the agreement. According to her, the platform Prosper Africa aims to develop a credit-rating online data platform for African market. It will serve as a vital online data and analytic tool to address long-standing challenges in data accessibility, which have historically skewed risk perception of African economies. And since the commencement of the bank's share buyback program on December 23, 2024, Airtel Africa has purchased over 12 million naira ordinary shares in aggregate at a volume-weighted average price of 116 GBP per ordinary share. The company entered into an agreement with Barclays Capital Securities Limited to conduct the first tranche of the buyback and carry out an on-market purchases of its ordinary shares within the company, subsequently purchasing its ordinary shares from the unit. Under this agreement, Barclays will act as risk principal and will make decisions independently of Airtel. We'll take a break now, but when Money Matters return, we'll be discussing the NCC increase in telecom tariff by 50%. I'll bring you details after this break. Welcome back. Telephone subscribers in Nigeria will pay more. Nigerian Communications Commission has approved a 50% tariff increase for telecom operators in the country. In a statement, a spokesperson for the regulator, Ruben Moka, said the price adjustment, though lower than the over 100% requested by some network operators, was arrived at taking into account ongoing industry reforms that will positively influence sustainability. The regulator said the increase was pursuant to its power under Section 108 of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003 to regulate and approve tariff rates and charges by telecommunication operators. For over a decade now, telecom tariffs have remained static despite surging operational costs. The NCC explained that this adjustment is necessary to close the widening gap between rising operational expenses and the rate charged for services. The move is expected to enable operators to invest in infrastructure and innovation, improving network quality, customer service, and coverage for consumers. Now, this decision has sparked debate around its impact on consumers, businesses, and the overall economy. Let's listen to what Nigerians have to say about this recent increase.
I'm a victim of the situation on ground, and I'm really affected by the consequences of what is really happening in the country currently which I am being reducted of the amount of data I use, because as at a year back, I spent about 10,000 naira on data, including my laptop, including my mobile phones. But at the moment right now, I spend about 1,000%. Like it's even higher than what I'm even expecting, because even making calls is so expensive, and data usage right now on my mobile phone gets exhausted easily. Like it's so very uncomfortable.
From beginning, they are not fair with us because they bring many things. When you get to your phone, you say you want to subscribe for a data. They will give you many options. They say this one is for per week, this one is a day, this one is this, and at times you do the one of per week. By day you see everything exhausted. So I see it as a cheating. So at times when you want to subscribe for data, you now be thinking, is this one going to be enough for you? So at times where we normally spend maybe 2,000, we see now maybe 10,000, 15,000, because many of us cannot do without having data in our phone. Because some people want to speak with us, they don't want to call. They prefer chatting or they call on WhatsApp. So we can't do with it. That's why they are taking advantage of us, because of they know we can't do with it. Many of us.
With the way things are in the world now, with everybody, you can't do things without data, and there's no way you can manage your data as a business person, because you don't know when a business call will come in or anything that has to do with internet will come in. So there's no way you can manage it. It's just for you to adjust yourself on other area so that you can accommodate that change.
This further financial expert Femi Oladele now joins me on the program. Thank you for your time, sir. Now, let's start with the basics. The NCC has approved the 50% tariff increase, citing rising operational costs and the need for industry sustainability. What's your take on this decision?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me again. I wanted to make a joke that does that mean that our inflation figures are 50% because we are raising rates by 50%, but I know that that's a discussion for another day. And I also understand that it's a long way coming, that telecom operators have been clamoring for rate hikes. But I would say that generally, the NCC has the power, and they have exercised, rightly so, their powers to increase the rates, considering what is happening right now. We all are witnesses to the rising prices across the country, even across the world in many jurisdictions. So a rate hike, I would say, if you ask me generally my opinion about rate hikes with respect to telecommunications, I would have clamored for more government intervention. But without that, and in the absence of that, I don't think anything is wrong with the current 50% hike. And this is on the back of the fact that many of them even asked for a 100% hike in rates.
All right, Mr. Oladele, you said nothing is wrong with the tariff hike, but trust me, so many Nigerians do not agree with what you just said now. Bearing in mind that this decision comes, yes. Now, bearing in mind that this decision comes at a time when many Nigerians are already facing financial pressures. Now, how do you think this particular tariff hike will affect the average consumer and household budget?
Significantly, I must, very significantly. And I'm not trying to downplay the realities of the common man. I'm also a common man myself, and I'm already rejigging my budget to fit the rate hike. But what I am saying is that in the absence of government intervention to keep the rates low, if we want innovation, if we want better services, then we have to also look at the bright side of what this is offering. Because at the end of the day, it looks like we're going to be draining these organizations. And I'm not holding the fort for any of them. And I'm not a politician. So I am not holding brief for the government. But what I would have loved is for government intervention in that space. If we look at it, some of the drivers of this price is electricity, which we don't have in abundance yet. Other infrastructure, social services that would make the provision of telecommunication services cheap. We don't have them. So that's why I mentioned that in the absence of government intervention, the rate hike is necessary. And I'm not saying that there is exactly nothing wrong with it, but based on the realities that we have, if we want those telecommunications service providers to continue to be in business, then we also have to bear with the rate hike. So I think it's good that I contextualize that and not just say a blanket that there is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Well, now let's look beyond individual consumers. So many businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, rely heavily on affordable telecom services in Nigeria. Now, what challenges do you foresee for these businesses?
Definitely, it would go into pricing. I use R because I'm an ecosystem participant as well, and there is no way that that won't go into the pricing of goods and services. So imagine someone who is heavily booked online. Maybe you do your booking online, all of your communications and all of that are heavily reliant on data and SMS and calls. Then it means that you cannot provide the same service that you used to provide at the lower rate. And so it means that we expect prices to increase. And when those prices increase, it also impacts our purchasing power. So it's a trickle down effect to everyone. For businesses, it's more significant for especially small businesses who are trying to innovate and take advantage of technology offerings around the world to sell their business, because it means that they are now going to be paying more for services that they were paying less for. And if you now combine that with the biting effects of higher rates for electricity as well, then you begin to see that the rates are not exactly favorable for businesses. But like I always say, when the going is this tough, businesses have to then begin to see how they can innovate around the core and continue to survive, because this is a given already. It's approved. So there is no number or amount of upra that we can give, except we don't want those businesses to also continue. And they are also businesses and they have to continue. So we have a condition or a situation rather where we are faced with hikes that are significant for the existence of those businesses. And we as business owners and managers also then begin to look at ways that we can maximize our innovation to ensure that we keep our rates moderate, especially when we transfer it to the price of goods and services that we offer. It's going to be significant and there will be a few weeks of disequilibrium, but I believe that after that, things might normalize.
The NCC emphasized that the adjustment is aimed at closing the gap between rising operational cost and the current tariff that we have. Now, do you think this increase is sufficient to address the challenges being faced by telecom operators while maintaining service quality, considering the fact that they were asking for a 100% increase before it was reduced to 50% by the NCC?
Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily agree with the fact that they asked for a 100% increase and they got a 50% increase. We understand in negotiations that you extend your long arm and get a short arm. So I wouldn't say that all of the factors have been factored into that 100% increase while they got a 50% increase. And like I said, for small businesses, for big businesses like the telecoms operators too, this is an opportunity for them to also innovate around the core and see how, with the 50% increase, provide better services, provide more stable innovations that can help people to drive their businesses as well. So it's not just about saying, oh, yes, they have increased the rates and let us now relax and enjoy the fruits of our labor. No, it's an opportunity for businesses and telecoms businesses, I mean, in this instance, to also see how they can increase value addition to their customers, especially small business owners. So there are areas for innovation around from both ends of the spectrum, for individuals, for small businesses, even for the telecoms operators themselves, so that we can see how in that ecosystem we can continue to provide significantly high value adding services.
Now, do you think this adjustment could encourage further investment in the telecom sector, both locally and internationally?
Yes, I totally agree with that, because if you look at MTN, for example, I'm just using that as an example. Their shares plummeted to about 190 last year. But yesterday, when I checked yesterday, it was well over 200. So it means that investors are showing interest in the stock. Also, I believe that when people understand that their returns are guaranteed to a large extent, they are more willing to commit their funds. So I see more inflows, and with more inflows means that the economy is also going to get more liquid, and we also understand that it can impact the GDP, not so significantly given all the other challenges that we have around the country, but we know that any contribution is a contribution. I use this analogy a lot. If you have a bucket that is dry, and my children will correct me and say it's bucket, but I'm Nigerian, I retain my Nigerian accent. If you have a dry bucket and you have just 2 drops of water in that bucket, you can no longer call it a dry bucket, even when it's just a little drop. So I believe that it's a significant contribution to the Nigerian economy generally. And with inflows, yes, I believe that there will be more inflows and there will be more innovation. I expect that telecom operators will begin to invest more in research and development to see how, with minimal increase, they can increase value offerings to people and businesses alike.
All right, so the NTC has mandated operators implement the tariff increase transparently and improve service delivery. Now, what step do you think can be taken to ensure that consumers see real benefit from this adjustment, which is meant to begin in February 2025? That's in about a month.
Yeah, So I would say generally that that's a tough question because I don't know what is in store of the telecom operators, but I believe that they have strategies and that they are working out modalities that would reduce the impact. Because what it means also is that for me, I am starting to look at how I would reduce probably the amount of data that I get monthly, or readjust my budget to fit my need. And so I believe that other individuals and businesses are already looking at ways to also do that. But for individuals, I believe that the service operators, the providers, would also be looking at ways to cushion the effect of the rate hike such that people don't abandon the service because it has become part of our lives. There are many people who would rather make calls than travel. And so if this would definitely impact them individually, it might impact the amount of time they spend on social media, for example. It might impact many other things, but also there might be a substitution effect. So I can't say correctly at this time, but I believe that the strategy departments or units of all of these operators will be working out things to help customers get more value even at this higher rates.
So one thing Nigerians have complained over time is about poor network quality. And with this new tariff increase, trust me, many Nigerians would hold the operators accountable. Now, how do you think Nigerians can hold operators accountable to ensure that there is improvement in network quality, customer service, as well as coverage?
And I'm speaking generally now. There is a certain quietness that Nigerians have imbibed over time when things go bad. So over time, maybe we would complain for about a week and then it's gone. I was telling some of my colleagues some days ago that I held an operator to refund my 200 naira just because I understood that if I didn't ask, they will keep charging other people in that way. So there is a silence that we have to break. When a service is not good, we have regulators that we can reach out to. The FCCP is there. I'm sorry, I can't recall the full meaning, but it's the FCCPC rather. They're there to take your complaints. There are other channels that you could use, social media, to reach out to those operators. You see that very well on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, and all of that. So I believe that we should not be silent when things don't go the way they ought to go. And after that silence, I believe that the regulators, especially the FCC, also should be holding these people significantly responsible for poor networks, because now you have at least some part of what you require, then you are also supposed to live up to expectations. So I believe that we should break the silence that we usually use to just say, just we'll just rationalize poor network delivery. We should do that. We should stop that silence. And also, I encourage the NCC and the FCCPC to also look for ways to ensure that good services are provided by operators.
Okay, so the FCCPC is the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. Now, moving on, the
Thank you so much.
NCC referenced the 2013 cost study and the 2024 tariff simplification guidelines in its decisions. Now, do you think these frameworks are still relevant for the current economic realities, or do you think they need to be updated? Now, let's consider the fact that inflation, which is one of the reasons that they mentioned for the increase, has changed since 2013 to this time. That was, I think in 2013 it was about over 8%. Now it's 34.80%. So inflation has increased from that time, and there are so many other things that has changed over time. Now, do you think these frameworks are still relevant in light of the changes we've experienced over time?
Yeah, so I haven't had the time to look at those frameworks, but what I have understood over time is that many times policy documents are hinged on current realities. It's very difficult for you to see a law that was made maybe 10 years ago to still be significantly and overall significant in this new dispensation. So I think that that's one thing we should consider. So I would say that definitely there will be a need for a review to bring it to terms with current realities that we are facing. And within those current realities, we have to also understand that there are things that government should be imputing in those policies. So there will be nothing bad, for example, if all academic sites are made free. So if I want to access any educational site, I can do that for free. That's what the government can do. So when the rate hike comes in, just like the work that the Committee on Tax Reforms are doing, so that we can create environments that make it very easy for people who would necessarily not have sufficient funds to be on over the internet to have access. If educational sites are made free, so as a Nigerian, and on my cell phone, on any device, I connect to any educational service and I'm getting access free of charge. Those things can be put in place also as part of policy to reduce the cost of data and calls and all of that. So I believe the policy should be revised in line with current realities. And I believe that not just the cost, but also government's contribution in that space. And not, so we should not just be about, oh, we are reviewing it, inflation has increased, and so we want to increase the rates too. But yes, our contribution was limited to this. How do we want to contribute now, and all of the other things that the government can do to make life easy for people and businesses?
Now, with this new tariff increase, Nigerians will now begin to pay about 6 naira for SMS, which used to be 4 naira before, and on the average, calls would now be about 16 naira. Now, do you think this tariff adjustment is a one-time measure, or do you think Nigerians should brace themselves for more increases in the near future?
So, and you know that it's not just about me sending an SMS that is now 6 naira plus. Yes. It means that when you make a bank transaction and you get an alert, you're also going to be paying that high rate, or higher rates rather. And so at this time, I would say that we should put our minds into the inflation and watch how inflation is going. I love what the CBN is doing. They have mentioned that they're using orthodox methods and they're watching inflation figures. We hope that their desire can be established by the policies and plans that they are putting in place. But I fear that Nigerians should expect more increases. But like I said, if the government would be approving more increases, there should be substitution effects, other things that the government can do to make it better and easier for people to have access to. Because we cannot kill access to information. And one of the highways for information in Nigeria is through the internet. And so I believe that if the government wants to go the route of increasing rates, then we should also be considering what are their contributions and how they are increasing those contributions in that space.
Now, before we wrap things up, Mr. Oladele, now with the telecom sector being critical to Nigeria's digital transformations, What strategies do you think operators should adopt to sustain growth while keeping services affordable at the same time? It might be difficult, but then the end goal is for growth to happen in the country.
Thank you. This report requires significant innovation. I believe that technology experts would be already brainstorming and thinking of how to ensure that people have access to services. Okay, so I'll take an example. Some weeks ago, there were calls of some kind of word of mouth advert by people saying that a certain filling station was providing fuel that extended the lifespan of their driving. And so I believe that there would also be ways where telecom providers would be looking at how to infuse innovation into their service offerings that allow Nigerians to not feel the significant impact of this hike and make access very, very affordable. Because the truth is that, like I said, many Nigerians will be impacted, especially small businesses that rely heavily on the internet for their services. But since we also want to sustain the telecom providers, then we also have to look for a way. And that way is innovation. I don't know how it's going to be, and so I cannot give a definite suggestion, but I believe that if technology experts put on their thinking caps, there will be services and products that would come out that would encourage people to be in that space and enjoy good services.
Well, let's hope that stakeholders are able to find a balance between the tariff increase and making life comfortable for Nigerians. Financial expert Femi Oladele, many thanks for lending your thoughts on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, sir. Well, that's it on this episode of Money Matters. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Okpeyemi Owosheni. See you next time.